We're running out of time, Anubarak. Tread lightly. This is more like it. Fine. I'll be singed if I get too close to those flames. At last. More of the Nerubians' blasted mechanisms. I'll have to time this perfectly. Last. Frostmourne hungers. This is more like it. At last. This is more like it. At last. This is more like it. Finally. Another quake? This is more like it. Finally. At last. Finally. This is more like it. Now, Frostmourne hungers. Finally. Frostmourne hungers. Finally. At last. Finally. At last. Finally. This is more like it. Frostmourne hungers. Your pain shall be legendary. Finally. At last. This is more like it. At last. This is more like it. We're running out of time. At last. Finally. I'll be singed if I get too close to those flames. Finally. More of the Nerubians' blasted mechanisms. I'll time this perfectly. This is more like it. Finally. This is more like it. Frostmourne hungers. At last. Finally. At last. Another quake? At last. Frostmourne hungers. This is more like it. Frostmourne hungers. At last. This is more like it. At last. Frostmourne hungers. Finally. This is more like it. Finally. Frostmourne hungers. Finally. This is more like it. Now, Frostmourne. Your pain shall be legendary. At last. Frostmourne hungers. At last. Frostmourne hungers. At last. We're running out of time. What is it now? Frostmourne hungers. I'll be singed if I get too close to those flames. Finally. More of the Nerubians' blasted mechanisms. I'll have to time this perfectly. Frostmourne hungers. At last. Finally. Frostmourne hungers. This is more like it. Finally. At last. Another quake? Frostmourne hungers. Finally. This is more like it. At last. Frostmourne hungers. At last. This is more like it. Finally. This is more like it. Finally. This is more like it. Finally. Frostmourne hungers. Finally. Frostmourne hungers. Finally. Frostmourne hungers. Finally. Frostmourne hungers. Finally. This is more like it. At last. Frostmourne hungers. running out of time. No one orders me around. I'll be singed if I get too close to those flames. Frostmourne hungers. More of the Nerubians' blasted mechanisms. I'll time this perfectly. At last. Frostmourne hungers. Finally. This is more like it. Finally. Frostmourne hungers. Finally. Another quake? I'll make sure you suffer. Now, Frostmourne. Frostmourne hungers. At last. Faithless cowboy. This is more like it. Frostmourne hungers. Finally. Speak, fool. Frostmourne hungers. This is more like it. Frostmourne hungers. What is it now? Finally. Frostmourne hungers. Finally. This is more like it. Frostmourne hungers. Finally. This is more like it. Now, Frostmourne. At last. This is more like it. At last. This is more like it. Frostmourne hungers. At last. Finally. This is more like it. At last. This is more like it. Finally. Frostmourne hungers. This is more like it. Finally. Frostmourne hungers. This is more like it. Tread lightly. For the Lich King. At last. Finally. This is more like it. I'll make sure you suffer. Frostmourne hungers. This is more like it. For the Lich King. At last. Frostmourne hungers. At last. You will know endless torment. This is more like it. At last. This is more like it. At last. Finally. At last. Frostmourne hungers. At last. This is more like it. Frostmourne hungers. At last. Speak, fool. Frostmourne hungers. This is more like it. Frostmourne hungers. At last. Finally. Frostmourne hungers. Finally. I must find a way across this strange obstacle. This is more like it. Finally. At last. This is more like it. Frostmourne hungers. This is more like it. Finally. At last. Tread lightly. Frostmourne hungers. At last. Frostmourne hungers. What is it now? This is more like it. Frostmourne hungers.
Another earthquake. We must hurry, Death Knight.
Something's breaking through. Defensive positions!
I have heard the summons.
Speak, fool. No one orders me around. Finally. This is more like it. At last. Finally. Frostmourne hungers. This is more like
Speak.
What is it now?
My might cannot
Tread
be
lightly.
matched.
No one orders me around. Tread lightly. At last.
They're blocking the way to the exit. We'll have to fight our way through them to reach it.
What is it now?
Speak.
Tread lightly.
Choice.
No one orders me around. Now once more. Tread lightly. What is it now? Tread lightly. For the Lich King.
Choice.
Speak, fool. What is it now?
What's done is done.
No one orders me around.
My might cannot
What is
be
it now?
matched.
No one orders me around. Your pain shall be legendary.
We're running out of time. We must find the exit. Speak.
Tread lightly.
I have heard the
What is
summons.
it now?
I serve
Speak,
only
fool.
the frozen throne.
Insufficient mana. Insufficient mana. Insufficient mana.
Finally.
My might cannot be matched.
No one orders me
I'll
around.
consume the living and the dead.
What is it now? This is more like it. At last. No one orders me around. Frostmourne hungers. What is it now? I'll make sure.
Time is fleeting.
Speak, fool. Tread lightly.
Speak. I'll see to it.
What is it now?
My might cannot be matched.
Tread lightly. At last. Frostmourne hungers. At last.
I serve only the frozen throne. I'll consume the
Frostmourne
living and the dead.
Fine. What is it now? Tread lightly. Freaking coward. At last. Finally. You will
My
everything.
might cannot be matched.
At last. Speak, fool. Finally. Frostmourne hungers.
Another earthquake. We must hurry, Death Knight.
Something's breaking through. Defensive positions!
Speak.
No one orders me around. Finally. At last. I'll make sure you suffer. Finally. This is more like it. At last. Finally. What is it now? This is more like it. Speak, fool.
Time is fleeting.
What is it now? At last. Frostborn hungers.
My might cannot be matched.
At last. Frostborn hungers.
Speak.
At last. This is more like it. Speak, fool. Tread lightly.
You may find
No one orders me around. Tread lightly. What is it now? No one orders me around.
choice.
What is it now? Speak, fool. At last. Finally. This is more like it.
We're running out of time. We must find the exits.
Lich King.
They're blocking the way to the exits. We'll have to fight our way through them to reach it.
What is it now? Tread lightly. Frostborn hungers.
The summons. Make
No one orders me around. Finally.
Speak.
What is it now? Frostborn hungers.
Time is fleeting.
Speak, fool.
Speak.
Your pain shall be legendary. This is more like it. Frostborn hungers.
My might
No
cannot
one
be
orders me
matched.
around. This is more like it.
I serve only the
Tread
frozen
lightly.
throne.
No one orders me around. Finally. This is more like it.
Now quickly, head through that door. The exit to the surface lies just